We're broadcasting. Good afternoon, everybody. A very warm welcome to you all. I hope you're all fit, healthy, happy. Obviously, some fairly significant challenges around the world at the moment, but hopefully you're all surviving. It's very nice to be back with you for the second NBN Digital webinar. And it's a great pleasure to have the one, the only, Mr. Justin Layer. Often we get given intros and bios to read out, but to be honest with you, Justin, I think most people joining today will be probably more familiar with you than you are. We had Owen Morgan on the other day, and the stats that were coming through, I think, had Owen raising an eyebrow and certainly learning more about himself than he perhaps was intending. Just for those, obviously, who don't know, a very quick whip through over 100 tests, obviously, for Australia, one of the world's greatest of all time, part of the greatest opening partnership of all time, and now current head coach of Australia as well. Looking very smart, the team. Where are you? What have you been up to of late? How is life with you right now?
Well, before I say anything, talking to you, Alex, I know we've spoken before. It's like listening to Andy Strauss talk.
Do you think?
Seriously, I might as well be talking to Strauss. He was a great mate of mine. Of course, we played at Middlesex together. But if you just put a Straussy mask on, you'd think you didn't go to the same school or something with Straussy, did you?
Not the same, but similar vicinity. But it's a great pleasure to be compared to Sir. Perhaps slightly more follicles on top, but he's achieved far more in life than I ever will do, so I'm happy to be compared. Have you spoken to him of late?
No, I haven't. I was watching his commentary during the test match, of course, against West Indies, which I really enjoyed. And but he's a ripping bloke. He's one of my favourites in my time as a teammate and then as an opposition player and captain. He's an outstanding person. So it's a compliment. I'm giving you a compliment with the voice anyway. And where am I? I'm in Perth, and we're right in the middle of winter here. So outside, I've actually got if you can believe it, in Perth, Western Australia, I've got my fire on, and it's about 8 o'clock at night. It's been a long day, but it's nice to be talking to you guys. That's for sure.
Very, very nice to have you on board. And thank you so much for giving up your time. There are so many things that we could talk to you about over the next hour or so. We're very much going to open it up. We've got a little chat box as well. So if any of you would like to get involved and to ask Justin a question or two, please feel free to do that. How have the last few weeks been? I mean, what have you been doing?
The last few weeks, well, actually, the last few months, and I do say this, we were talking before we came on, I say this with great compassion and great respect, because I know a lot of people are suffering in all sorts of ways through this COVID period. But for me personally, it's been like nirvana. There's literally nothing I haven't enjoyed about it, because last year I spent 300 days away from home. Yeah. Of course, we had the World Cup and Ashes in England, and then we had the full Australian summer. And so when you spend 300 days away home and you're a father of 4 kids and you love being home in Perth, that's a stretch. And I've done that for most of my adult life. So to have been home for the last 3 or 4 months and see my kids every day and sleep in my own bed and eat home cooked meals and walk into my own garden and walk across to the beach, which is across the road, it's been awesome. And but now, of course, we're coming to England in a couple of weeks' time. I think we arrive on probably the 23rd of August. Yeah. So my mind's starting, and it has been for this last few weeks, working through the complexity of leaving Australia to England, even more complex, coming from England back to Australia. So, but I've really enjoyed the last few months.
Has your lawn got military lines and the borders are looking better than ever, and you've creosoted the fence 14 times out on the board and sort of kick back in the hammock?
I actually love gardening. Not many people know this, but I love my gardening. I always have. For some reason, I'm not sure why. It's sort of a good release for me. We've got a beautiful garden where we are. My lawn, though, my lawn drives me crazy. I mean, I just can't get my lawn right. So if anyone out there's got any advice on that, we work hard on it. We've usually got someone who comes and does the lawns for us. But I've got beautiful roses. I've got beautiful citrus trees. I've got a beautiful garden. So, and it is something that I do. I escape to do a lot of my thinking about work and all sorts of things.
Amazing. I'm very glad to hear it. We'll get some horticultural tips for you before the end of the hour, I'm sure. Have you had an itch? Have you been sort of looking forward to getting back into it, or have you had to sort of tip yourself out of the armchair a little, say, I've enjoyed it, but it's time back into the day job?
Well, I must admit, I watched the first test, and I must say that for the first test, England versus West Indies, and it actually struck me because last year when we were in England for the Ashes and the World Cup, all my mates at home, when we came home, they go, oh, we couldn't get away from the TV. It was unbelievable. Because then you go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning over here, or in the Eastern States, 4 o'clock in the morning. We couldn't leave, and I couldn't leave the first test match. So particularly the last few days, and I've watched bits and pieces of it. It's different watching it without crowds, obviously, but I know our guys are absolutely itching to start playing cricket. They're super fit. They've been doing, a lot. They're in great condition, but they just want to play cricket now, and they're in that lovely time in their life. But that's all they've got to concentrate on. They've enjoyed the time at home, the freedom, and the ability to get fit and healthy. But now it's time to go, and we recognise how important it is for the health of the game that the Australian cricket team comes and plays the England cricket team. Yeah. There's been a lot of, in terms of the economics of the game, it's really important for us to help out one of our partners in English cricket, as it's important for India to come over to Australia in the summer. If they don't, it's worth about $300 or $400 million to us. So therefore, you can understand the significance of India not coming, as it's significant for Australia to come to England.
Amazing. What's the WhatsApp group been like? Has it been active and a lot flying about, or have people been concentrating on their own stuff?
No, plenty of banter. There's always plenty of banter. And look, one of the most important things about leadership, and particularly coaching, is that you have to stay connected. Yeah. And actually what I've found over the years is that staying connected, particularly now with technology, it's just an attitude. Staying connected is an attitude. It's simple as that, because there's no excuses. So there's no excuses not to stay in contact with your family or your friends or your associates, because if you've got, if you take a bit of time, you can keep building relationships and looking after each other, even in this time where you're not face to face.
Who puts the most into the group?
Oh, David Warner, for sure. Absolute no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer. He knows everything. He knows everything about everything. So if I need to know any gossip, I need to know any rumours, I need to know any whispers around the place, I'll always get Davey, and Davey will be on the contracted players list or the touring list or the golf. We've got a golf WhatsApp. So he will always be coming up with, and geez, he comes up with some absolute rubbish. But it's great humour. It's great humour having Davey keeping us all on our toes.
Good to hear. We're very much looking forward to you coming over. You will have a warm reception, and we're looking forward to that. We've got,
like last year.
Well, that's we'll come on to that. I can tell you there have been a lot of people sitting at home very bored, so I'd like to promise you a warmer welcome, but I can't guarantee it. But if you're happy, I think we've got a sort of 45, 50 minutes. I'd love to split this into a couple of bits. I'd love to talk about you as the player, and then obviously, what you're doing today and what you've been through in the last 18 months or so. But you as a player, first of all, how would you describe Justin Langer, the cricketer?
I was very determined. I was a person who was able to take advice and bounce back from adversity. And I always felt that when you go through tough times or you get tough advice, and what's most interesting to me is I wouldn't be sitting here now today without amazing mentors. Nigel Ray, of course, is right up on top of the list. And he was really tough on me. When I came to the Old Mill Hillians Cricket Club as an 18-year-old, he was really tough on me.
In what way?
But he also made it worse. Well, he just told, I remember clear as day, we're down on the Sussex tour, and I was 18 or 19, making a few runs for the Old Mill Hillians, and I was being my curious self. And I asked Nigel the question, what is it about success? And he told me a whole lot of things which stay with me to this day. He had amazing advice back then. And to this moment, Nigel provides me with great mentorship and advice. But 3/4 of the way through him telling me what success looked like, we were driving in his car down a little winding road in Sussex, and he pulled off the side of the road. And Nigel said to me, you asked me about success and you talk about playing test cricket for Australia one day, but he basically said, what I see, you are kidding yourself. I don't see you do any extra practice. I don't see you do any extra fitness training. you go to nightclubs and God knows what else you're doing, and you tell us you're going to play for Australia. And he said these words. He said, as far as I'm concerned, you might be a good club cricketer. And it was amazing because at that time I went, wow, coming from someone like Nigel, and that really kicked me into action. And Lucy will tell you the story that out the back of the Priory, all of a sudden I started training like Rocky Balboa. I was running, I was doing sit-ups, I was doing push-ups, I was doing skipping. I was saying, no, Nigel, I want to show you. And that little bit of, but Nigel always said, if you ever play Test cricket, I'll be there. He told me that at the airport, at Heathrow Airport, the day I was flying out from that first stint at the Old Mahillians. And amazingly, 5 years later, I played Test cricket. I found out 24 hours before, because someone had been injured. I flew there, and Nigel flew. How on earth he got from London to Adelaide for the first time in Adelaide and was there for my first Test match was extraordinary. And what I found is that if I look back, the people who have been the toughest on me are to this day my best friends. And the reason they were tough is because they cared about me. They wanted to see me do well, and they gave me different bits of advice. And to this day, they're the ones I respect and I love and I admire the most. And I think if I look back, I describe myself as a cricketer, it was someone who wanted to get better, who was able to, when you go through tough times, I got a lot more ducks than I got hundreds. I've dropped a few times from the Australian cricket team. When you go through tough times, you've got two choices. You either quit or you get better. It's simple as that. You quit or you get better. And I was a person who decided to take the second route of getting better. And I get better physically, mentally, technically, emotionally. I had to get better because playing in the Australian cricket team is really tough. International sport's really tough. So I was always looking to get better. I was lucky to have great mentors that I still have to this day. And I think that's how I describe myself as a player. Someone who was very driven, who took on advice and was always looking to get better.
That's a brilliant answer. I'd never heard that before. That's a fabulous story. And it's interesting you mentioned 5 years on from Nigel's advice, there you are preparing to your country. Can you remember your emotions and I suppose, how you found entering that Australian setup as a guy making strides in the world?
Well, remember, when I was 11 years old, the great Dennis Lillee, the fast bowler, Australian, probably our best ever, was bowling to the great Sir Vivian Richards at the Melbourne Boxing Day Test match in 1981. I was 11 years old. And on the last ball of the day, we've been playing backyard cricket all day because backyard cricket in Australia is everything. Cricket in the summer is everything, right? It's like football in your country. So we're playing, jumping out of the swimming pool, watching the cricket. Kim Hughes scored 100 in the morning. Kim Hughes was my hero. The last ball of the day, there's 90,000 people at the Melbourne cricket ground. Lillee running in the bowl, and he bowled Sir Vivian Richards on the last ball of the day. I was 11 years old, and that was the moment. That was the moment as Australia's walking off. Dennis Lillee's got his big moustache, his big hair. He's got his shirt undone down to his belly, but he's got his big hairy chest and his gold chain. That was the moment. So when I'm 11 years old, all I wanted to do was play Test cricket for Australia. And then when it happens, it's unbelievable. But a great friend of mine from the SAS, he once said to me, Justin, most people can live the dream, but not many people can live the reality. Most people can live the dream, but not many people can live the reality. In other words, a lot of people would like to wear the green beret of a Royal Marine, or they'd like to have a baggy grey cap, or they'd like to drive a Mercedes Benz, or they'd like to be the CEO of the company. Everyone can live the dream, but living the reality is so flippin' hard. It's hard work. You have to make sacrifices. It's scary. And that's what happened with me in my first Test match. I got the baggy green cap. Firstly, I walked into the hotel, and there at the bar the night before the Test, were my heroes, Alan Border and David Boone and the War Brothers. And back then, they were drinking like they had some pints of beer and they were having a beer, but the night before the Test match, and I'd go, this is the old days, and I shook, and I'm meeting my heroes. These days, the night before the Test, it's a joke. They're all meditating or spiritual healing or polishing up their diamond earrings or beating their legs. It's an absolute joke from how it used to be, but that was it. And then the next morning, I'm out there living the reality of facing the mighty West Indies. And the very first ball in Test cricket, I got hit in the helmet and nearly got knocked out cold. So, and that becomes a reality. You have the dream when you're a kid, then you've got to have the courage and the guts and the know-how to keep going and get through the reality of being in that tough school of international cricket.
You mentioned Boone and the War Brothers, etc. Was that a welcoming environment to step into, or is it the one where you've got to prove that you belong before you get the final forward for you?
Very different. Alan Border didn't even talk to me. He didn't talk to me once. He was tough. And Bobby Simpson, the coach, they're tough, mate. They were hard men. David Boone did not talk to me for, I can't remember. Actually, the one thing David Boone did in my first test, it was about day 3, and I smashed. I was getting hit all over the body, and I got hit in the helmet a few times. And David Boone said to me, because I didn't have a jumper, because I got over the day before, it was a bit cold in Adelaide, and I borrowed his short sleeve vest to go and bat him. And as he gave it to me, he said, and he had a cigarette still in his mouth, and he said, "Justin, this cricket will never get harder than this, son." And I thought it was just being nice. I look back when I was facing Ambrose and Walsh and Ian Bishop, it literally never ever got harder than my first innings in Test cricket.
That is amazing.
But it was a tough score. I'm Alan Border, mate. My third Test match, I was fielding at bat pad, silly me on. Merv Hughes was bowling to the great Martin Crowe.
Yep.
Alan Border says to me, "Okay, take helmet off and go out to deep backward square legs." So I ran out there, put my hat cap on. The very first ball, Merv Hughes bowled a bouncer to Martin Crowe, who played a pull shot straight to me, the easiest catch in the history of the world, and I dropped it. And Alan Border, my flippin' hero, got his baggy green cap. He threw it on the ground. He's kicking it. He's I could concentrate, you young punk. And that was like my introduction to Alan Border. It was like scary. I mean, going into that environment back then, but it was a great grounding. It was an unbelievable grounding to play with of that caliber, the character, and it's so different than it is now.
Can you remember the point of your career, or I don't know, it might have been a Test match, it could have been anything really, where you felt that you truly belonged?
Great question. Because when you're growing up, everyone goes, "Oh, just back yourself, just have confidence in yourself," and you're going, "Oh yeah, okay. What does that mean? What does that actually mean? Have confidence or back yourself?" But it wasn't. It was actually my fourth Test 100. The first one was just a pure relief in Pakistan, in Peshawar, where you'd never ever travel to today. I got one against England, and then my third or fourth, it was against the West Indies in Antigua, and it was against Ambrose. And I felt then, if I can score 100 against Ambrose and Walsh and their mates in their home ground, in their home turf, righto, I reckon I can play Test cricket. But it took a long time. That was in 1999, and I started in 1993. So it took its time, and you can't fake it. Everyone can tell you how to feel and how to behave and how to play, but you can't fake it until you actually do it. Someone asked me today on a podcast, they said, "What do you look for in the players? When you're selecting, what do you look for?" I said, "Well, what you look for, you've got a gut feeling, but what you see is how they perform under pressure. And some of them have got it, some of them haven't. But what you want is the players who can perform under pressure." Marnus Labuschagne, who played that incredible innings when Steve Smith got hit in the neck from Jofra Archer last year at Lords. This is this kid who we picked him purely on character. You couldn't pick him on numbers. He would play cricket for nothing. No one trains harder, or maybe Steve Smith, but no one trains harder. No one's fitter. No one loves the game more than him. And when I told him at the nursery ground, we'd ruled Steve Smith out, I walked over the nursery and I said to him, "Oh, mate, look, Steve Smith's out for concussion. What do you reckon? You reckon you're up for this?" And he got this big smile. "Up for it? Coach, get me out there." Mate, are you joking? Am I up for it? I've been waiting my whole life for this, to play at Lords. And then he played that beautiful innings of 50 odd. And that's what you see. I mean, you see these great characters, and that's what I love about coaching and playing the game, actually.
I wouldn't ask you to name names, but if for everyone like Martin, you've just described, where the lights come on, do you see players who not buck under it, but doubt themselves when the lights are turned, the spotlight falls?
I think 90% of international stars doubt themselves.
Really?
But oh yeah, absolutely. But what they do is they just find strategies to get through it. I'll never forget reading Johnny Wilkinson's book. And there's two things I've talked about from Johnny Wilkinson. I love Johnny Wilkinson, even though he beat us in the World Cup with that kick. But I love so much about Johnny Wilkinson. But I remember reading his book, and it made so much sense to me. This is the great Johnny Wilkinson, right? The great Johnny. And I'm reading it, and he said, in the book, he said, got so nervous, I used to set my alarm an hour before I was supposed to get up, just so I could keep pressing the snooze button, because I knew I didn't have to get out of bed, because I was safe in my bed. And then, because when you get out of bed, that's when they've got all this pressure. And I used to do exactly the same thing. If I had to get up at 7, I would set my alarm at 6. I could just press the snooze button, so I didn't have to get out of bed. And that was just a strategy, you know. And the other thing Johnny Wilkinson said, Michael Parkinson asked, and I use this quote a lot. Michael Parkinson asked Johnny Wilkinson years ago, what made you such a great player? And he sort of thought for a second, and he said, well, you are the player, that you are the changing room that you walk into. And I walked into a great change room. So therefore, that was the culture I got to know. And I was able to then develop into the player I was, because I walked in a great culture. And, you know, I thought that was really powerful. Those two things from Johnny Wilkinson were really powerful. But I think of McGrath and Gilchrist and Steve Waugh, and I've seen Shane Warne, the great Shane Warne. I've seen Ricky Ponting. They all doubt themselves. They just find strategies to get through it. We're all human beings, but every great player, I've seen that every one of them, they all doubt themselves. The greats of the greats, they all doubt, find strategies. I'll never forget, after I retired, I was in the Coogee Bay Hotel in Sydney, and I had a glass of red wine, and there was a guy named Robbie Baker, who I'd grown up with our Scarborough Cricket Club, and he was a very talented, very handsome young bloke, but succumbed to chronic fatigue syndrome. So his cricket career didn't really play out as he would have hoped. And I'll never forget him saying, Justin, I wish I was as mentally tough as you. If only I could have been as mentally tough as you. And I remember saying to him, Bakes, if only you knew, mate. I used to have sleepless nights. I used to be so scared to go to the ground every day. But I just found strategies to get through it. I had more doubts and fears than anyone. But I just found ways through mentors, or through learning, or through reading, or through just finding a way to find strategies. There would not be a sportsman out there that hasn't had doubts. And because that helps me as a coach, because I can empathise and know if they tell me they do, they are complete bullshit artists.
Right. I am genuinely fascinated by your response to this next question. I would love to know the psychology of padding up and going out to bat. And you talk about your strategies, but I'd love to know, you know, when it is right, we're on. How did you prepare? You don't get a lot of time. You know, how do you get yourself? How do you get yourself ready to go out into the middle? What did you do? Routine, process. I promise. I will put it like this. My grandmother, who passed away a long time ago, she was a great cook. When I was growing up, she was like, make the best cakes in the world, right? Make the best fruit cake, or the best pavlova, or the best cheesecake. It was unbelievable. She never got it wrong. It tasted delicious every time, right? Now you might think, what on earth is he talking about? I'll tell you. My nana became the best maker of cakes I've ever known, because she knew what the recipe was. Over her life, she would have made lots of mistakes to come up to when she was a nana and make the best, because she knew what the recipe was. It's no different in sport. You've got to work out what the recipe is, and then you stick to it. My routine was literally, if I played a charity game at the Old Mill Hellions Cricket Club, or a test match at Lord's in an Ashes test, my routine was exactly the same. I stuck with it. It was like my Bible. So, for example, I haven't played cricket for
nearly 10 years. My last game was at Somerset, and I can tell you exactly what happened. I'd get to the ground, we're batting first. I'd put my forearm guard on the next to my seat. I'd have 2 PK chewing. It had to be 2 PK chewing. It couldn't be extra. It couldn't be juicy fruit. It couldn't be Wrigley's. It had to be 2 PK chewing gums. I'd put a quarter of a glass of water next to it. Couldn't be a full glass. Couldn't be a half. It had to be a quarter of a glass of water next to it, right? I would put my headphones in before going to bat, and I'd listen to the same. I'd listen to She Will Be Loved, Maroon 5, or Lose Yourself, Eminem, or You and Your Hand, Pink, and I'd have the same 3, or Metafix, Big City Lights. So I'd have the same playlist, and I'd have that on. And because I'm a thinker, I'd be relaxed. I'd be dancing. I had to be smiling. I had to be rapping. I had to be dancing. I'd look over in the corner, and there's Matthew Hayden sitting there, headphones in, sweatband, looking serious, like he's about to go into war. And my person had to be dancing around. Then we get out in the middle. When I was opening with Haydas, I always took the first ball. I knew I was going to do that. That helped my routine. I'd get out in the middle. I'd make the centre guard, and then I'd scrape my foot on the turf just so my bat could fit. And then every ball after that, I'd go, okay, head forward, head forward, head forward, head forward as he's running in. And then just as he releases the ball, I'd say ball or sharp. Because all I had to think about was seeing the ball come out of the bowler's hand, right? That's all I had to think about. If I did that, I was concentrating on the ball only. If I concentrated on the ball, I'd get through that ball. If I did that enough times, I'd score runs. If I score runs, I'd get selected next game. If I got selected next game, I'd get a contract. It was all about the ball. It was about my routine and the ball. And that's all I did. And I also wanted to go, before I went to bed the night before a game, I wanted to know that 1 cue, not 10 cues, not 5 cues, the 1 cue. So when I walked out in the middle, I was going to concentrate on that 1 cue, whether it was head forward or loose forearm or loose something, just a physical thing. So then I could just head forward as he's running in, and watch the ball, and then just play. And that was what I'd do before I bat.
Absolutely amazing. It's an extraordinary, you've stood at the top of the game, and you are one of the greats. It's an extraordinary thing for those outside that who will never get a chance to try and relate to. It's an extraordinary psychology, really.
The biggest challenge is teaching yourself to relax your body. So concentration is number one. Concentration is the essence of the game, particularly in our game. Peak performance is concentration, eliminating the thoughts of the last ball or the next ball, the last week or the next week, the last year or the year after, eliminating everything just to the ball. So concentration is number one. The second trick is to have a loose body. Learn how to relax your body, because there's a word in martial arts called kaime, K-I-M-E. Bruce Lee used to talk a lot about it. Loose body, tight mind. You think about it, you've never seen Usain Bolt running all stiff, or Tiger Woods swing a golf club all tight, or Roger Federer playing with all tight. No. You got to be a loose body, but a tight mind. And that was always the challenge. That was always the challenge of our game. And to do it for as long as you possibly could.
So many things I want to ask you. So the question I want to ask you now, and this is obviously often leads into quite sort of an interesting, I suppose, reflection from your part. If you could go back one moment of your playing career again, either because you felt totally and utterly sort of indestructible at the crease, or it was the innings, the greatest innings, or because it was something you changed, if I could give you teleportation powers now, where would you go?
I would probably go, there's two I'd say. I was able to get 250 against England in a Boxing Day test match, my high school. So that was amazing. I mean, to play England in front of my family, friends, that was huge. 1998, we played against Pakistan in Hobart, and we were 5 for 100. It was Adam Gilchrist's second game. Adam Gilchrist is the greatest player of all time and the greatest bloke of all time. And he walked out to bat. We were 5 for 100, chasing 360 against Wazam Akram, Waqar Younis, Shoaib Akhtar, Azam Mahmood, and Saqlain Mushtaq, the genius off spinner. We were 5 for 100, and I was on the verge of getting dropped, and we were able to get over the line. We had a 260-run partnership. It was a bloody miracle. I still don't know how we did it, but that was a turning point. That was the second Test victory of our 16 straight, our first of the 16 straight Test wins. Yeah. So we felt personally it was important, but for the group, if we could win from that position, we could win from anywhere. And I played in an amazing team. And I'd say England in at the MCG for an Australian kid, there's no bigger dream than that. And Pakistan with my mate Adam Gilchrist.
Brilliant. And is there an itch that you haven't yet scratched, or have you've made peace with everything that your career gave you as a player?
Well, I guess another way to answer that question, if I could go back and give my 18-year-old self some advice, or 20-year-old self some advice, it'd be simple. It'd be, don't worry so much. I spent so much time worrying. And when I first started playing, I wanted to show Mark Taylor and Mark Moore that I could bat. And international cricket is hard enough as it is. And I was putting myself under, just because I felt those two thought I was rubbish. So I put so much pressure to try and prove to them, rather than just watching the ball and playing. But worry. And my nana also, when I talked about it with it, my nana used to always say to me, darling, I said, Nan, I'm really worried about this. And she goes, darling, is there anything you can do about it? I go, no, there's nothing I can do about it. She goes, don't worry about it then, darling. And another time I go, Nan, I'm really worried about this. And she goes, is there anything you can do about it? I go, yeah, of course there's something I can do about it. She goes, well, don't worry about it then. If you can do something about it, you don't have to worry about it. If you can't do anything about it, don't worry about it. And I would give my young self that advice. Control the controllables. And I know it almost sounds like a bullshit cliche now, but it's so true.
Yeah.
Look after what you can control, and I'd worry a lot less than I did as a young player, because it just puts so much pressure on. And it's hard enough as it is. Life's hard enough as it is, let alone international sport.
Don't worry about it so much. Have another slice of fruitcake. Some very profound words from a great lady. Yeah.
She's a legend.
You were obviously part of, arguably the greatest sort of team dynasty in cricket, full stop. One of the stories that always goes with that side is that it wasn't necessarily the most united, not necessarily united, but there were some very different characters amongst that team. Is that true? I mean, was it obviously united in one cause on the field, but I'd love to know a bit more about sort of off the field, and how, when you've got huge personalities and huge characters, but who perhaps come at life from very different angles, how you get to that point on the field where it's all going in the right direction.
Well, there's two sides to this question, and one is that as a coach now,
yeah,
one of the greatest strengths I've got is I'm a father of 4 daughters. And the reason I say that is that my daughters all come from the same place. They came from the same upbringing, and they're all so different. They're so uniquely different. So I figure if all my daughters are different, all my players, all my teammates are going to be completely different. And that helps me as a coach, because I've got to literally treat every player differently. I've got to build relationships with them differently. I've got to find different buttons to push with them. And that's something that's very, very important in leadership. Every person, you've got to treat everyone differently. Well, I think where a lot of people get it wrong is they try and treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
I did for a lot of time as a captain. I wasn't a great captain because I thought they all had to be like me. Train hard, be really determined. But that was a really great, I'm glad I had that lesson as a captain, sometimes tough lesson. So that's helped me become a better coach. So that's one part of it. The whole notion that we weren't a close team is absolute rubbish. We were, honestly, these guys are like my brothers. They are literally Adam Gilchrist, Ricky Ponting, Matthew Hayden, Glenn McGrath, Steve Waugh, Damien Martin. I think of guys like Alan Border, even though he's tough, he's like my big brother. Honestly, they are like I spent more time with them than I did with my blood brothers. And they are like my brothers. And I say, not many people get the privilege of going to work every day, something they love, with their best mates. So I'd go to work to take on England or take on West Indies or Pakistan or India with Matthew Hayden or Ricky Ponting or Adam Gilchrist. I go to work or travel all around the world with these guys, and they, to this day, they are like my brothers. So anyone who tells me we weren't a very close team, you know, that we did have, I mean, Shane Warne, different customer, but one of the greatest things I ever did was play cricket with Shane Warne. He's a very kind, very generous, different, but as I said, everyone's different. But playing on the field with Shane Warne was one of the great privileges of my whole life. Because when you play, when he was in your team and McGrath was in your team, you won 90% of games. And it's much more fun winning than losing. So then you have more parties and you have more celebrations. And then you even build the camaraderie is even stronger. So it was a great team, not just on the field, but off it. It was so funny. About a month ago, I went out for lunch to Tom Moody's house. It was one of the best days of my whole life. Tom Moody, Adam Gilchrist and Jeff Marsh. And we went to Tom's for lunch. And over the course of drinking a few beautiful red wines and talking rubbish, we FaceTimed every single player from the 1989 Ashes tour, which was before my time. But so we were on the phone, we're talking to Alan Border and David Boone and Carl Rackham and Tim May in America and all these great blokes that Tom and Jeff Marsh had played with, and it was so much fun. Like they're ex-teammates. That's what I love about sport. You have friendships that last forever. The fact that Joe asked me if I'd come and talk to you guys today, I didn't even have to think for 1 millisecond, because the Ray family are like my family. And it all started by going to the Old Mill Hillians Cricket Club. You know, the friendships you gain out of sport and like are just, So anyone who says we weren't a close team, they're trying to pick holes in something, because we're literally like brothers. I love them. I love everyone. There's not one of them I love.
It's an easy question, obviously, and it's rightly been dispatched straight back over my head, like the gold days. Funny enough, actually, years ago, I presented the Shane Warne Poker Ashes in London. And Sachin won it. It was an extraordinary event, but I still remember he has a sort of a megawatt something about him. I mean, so many of your crew do. It's, you know, I suppose if you achieve at the highest level, there is a sort of an electricity and a presence that goes with you. Actually, we've had one question which I'd love to. Did you ever find out why McGrath's called Pidge? I must get some of these questions. Sorry.
Yeah, I think because he had such skinny legs. And when he came into the game, because Pigeon came in really late to the game. I think he only started when he was 19 or 20 or something ridiculous like that. And so he didn't really have any creams. So someone lent him a pair of white pants to play his first game. They're too short for him, and he had these little ankles about that skinny. So it looked like he had pigeon legs. I'm sure that's where Pigeon comes from.
Little cut-offs.
Glenn McGrath is without doubt the biggest nuisance I ever played with as well. The biggest pest I've ever played with is Glenn McGrath, bar none. But I'm also convinced in 2005 Ashes against a great England side who beat us, that moment when McGrath stepped on the ball at Edgbaston, I'll never forget that moment. And we just had an extraordinary win in the first test, probably the best game of cricket I ever played in. And then Glenn McGrath stepped on the ball 45 minutes before that, and I'm sure that was the moment. That was the moment where it all changed.
The beat of the butterfly's wing, or whatever it is that they say. I must ask you about 2005, because we've got, you know, obviously a home crowd here. It was, from an Englishman's point of view, I mean, it's just the most extraordinary summer, really. How do you reflect on it now on the other side? I mean, do you feel that you were part of something very, very special, or the result dictates a different emotion?
No, not at all. I mean, it was an amazing test series, wasn't it? There's no doubt of that. It was, you know, it was great. What I found fascinating when we got home, and for leading up to that for some time, it actually became quite a demotivator for us, because we were winning so much and we were winning easily. The Australian public were going to say, we need a competition. You're winning too easy. I remember saying back then, mate, I'm playing in a team with 8 all-time great players and a few good ones like me. 8 all-time great players, right, are in the team. So enjoy this. It's not going to last forever. But we were winning, and then we got home. We'd been beaten, and everyone was going, oh, greatest series I've ever seen. I go, yeah, but we got beaten. Oh, yeah, but it was just, couldn't take my eyes off the TV. So it was an interesting psyche, but what a series. What a series. I'll never forget the very first ball of the series. I faced the first ball. Steve Harmison runs in. And what happens when you're opening the batting? You usually face the first ball of the test match. It's like the beat of the drum. And the noise just goes, oh, and it's like, it gets so loud. And you sort of you're pumping your bat because you can just, this noise. But it was the opposite at Lords. The first ball at Lords went silent. And I'm sort of looking for rhythm. And instead of like rhythm and getting pumped up for the fight, it went completely silent as it does at Lords. And the first ball of that series, Harmison bowled one and it flew past my nose. And Geraint Jones took it up here. But what happened next was unbelievable. The guy at bat pad was walking towards me. Point was walking towards me. The slips were walking towards me. Harmison was about this far from my face. And I went, Christ. And Matty Hayden walked down. He goes, mate, be sharp. These guys mean business. And the body language for the ball, and the second ball hit me on the elbow. And I got a massive lump on my elbow. I think because of adrenaline, I literally had zero pain, right? But I had this big, so everyone thought I was tough because I kept going. But I actually didn't feel it. There was no pain. It was no stress. And then Ricky Ponting got cut under the eye in that first hour. Matty Hayden got hit on the helmet for the first time. It was the most amazing test match. And then it just got better and better from there. That innings of Peterson in that last test match at the Oval, who would have thought, mate? We were sledging. He come in and he's taking times. He wants to get to lunch, and we're running and we're sledging him, and he just sort of kept. And then and Brett Lee's bowling fast. He just kept hooking him for six, and then banging him through mid wicket. It had everything. It had everything. But it also had this from Australians' point of view. One of the worst feelings I've had in cricket was standing up on the Oval balcony when Michael Vaughan held up the Ashes and all the blue and red. What do you call it over there? Like. Ticker tape stuff all over, and that was a moment where we went, oh, I can't believe we're going home. But I'll tell you an interesting thing of psychology. When we got on that Qantas jet to go home, it was like the biggest relief in the world, because if you're playing England, when England are playing well, mate, it's like swimming into a tidal wave. And it was a relief, as it was to get off after last year's Ashes. It was like a relief to get on the plane to come home.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's 15 years ago. But yes, I was 25 at the time, and it had been a long time coming, which probably was why the celebrations became what they were. I'm conscious of time, and this is absolutely fascinating. I obviously want to ask you about the current day job. Sandpaper Gate, you've spoken about at length, but why? How did were you approached? Did you throw your hat in the ring? How did you end up where you are now?
Why did Sandpaper Gate happen, or why?
Why did you decide to take over at the lowest point? Is it the lowest point? The lowest point in Australian cricketing history.
Lowest point ever in Australia. But there's two things. One, the day after Sandpaper Gate, I went down to the Fremantle markets, which no one on this call will understand. It's like the markets which I go down with Ali, my hippie daughter, every Sunday. It's our date. Whenever we go to the Fremantle markets, and we drink our coffee and eat our money and talk rubbish. And we did it for 4 or 5 years. And the next one, and we used to go, and I just mind my own business. The next day, about 30 people walked up to me, all guys from all the hippies down in Fremantle, and they're going, JL, what's happened? What's happened to our cricket team? And I went, wow, this is having a big impact. Then the following day, that was on the Sunday, on the Monday, I went to they were building a new facility at the West Coast Eagles AFL Football Club, of which I'm a board member. And I was there looking at it. There had been 300 Aussie blokes in their hard hats and their steel cap boot, all working on this construction site. And they're coming up, they're going, Justin, what has happened to our cricket team? And they were angry, and it was palpable. You could feel it and the emotion. And to put it into context, Steve Smith and David Warner were suspended for one game by the ICC. One game. We suspended them for a whole year because we knew they'd done the wrong thing. And then a week later, Darren Lehman resigned. And I remember thinking, wow, this is now not maybe. There's the Australian cricket job might come up one day. It's coming up right now. I remember my kids looking at me. Sue was over in London for Jesse's 21st birthday. My wife was there for Jesse's surprise 21st birthday. When all this went down, so I was home with the three of the girls. The girls go, "What does this mean, Dad?" I don't know. And a month later, I left my dream job, head coach of West Australian Cricket, the head coach of the Perth Scorchers, on the board of the West Coast Eagles Footy Club, at home with my family every day. It's the dream job for me because I'm in Perth every day, to taking on the coach of the Australian cricket team. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But looking back, as stressful as much of an impact it's had on me personally with my health or with my family, I look back and I go, we're really proud of it. We're really proud of what we've achieved.
Rightly so. It's been a remarkable turnaround. Could you just give some sort of insight into what it was like walking in on day one and not necessarily morale, but the group that you had to pick up off the floor?
Yeah, well, obviously it was people were embarrassed, people were angry, people were sad, and this is the players I'm talking about. I was very fortunate because I took over the West Australian job in time of crisis as well. So therefore I had a good dress rehearsal at it. And my style is, I went in from day one, I went in really hard. These are the rules. You take a risk. I'm talking about some stars of Australian cricket, but and it was all about recreating our culture. And I've said these three words every day for the last 2.5 years. Make Australians proud. Make Australians proud. Our job is to make Australians proud. For the year leading up to, all they talked about as being the #1 team in the world. That's all they talked about. Yeah. But what I recognise is so much more than that. Make Australians proud. And we're going to live these 5 values. We're going to develop great cricketers and great people. Australians being your mum and your dad and your brothers and your sister and your grandparents and your mates. They're Australians. And the public will earn back respect of the opposition. And we'll only do that by elite behaviours on and off the cricket field. And that's all we've talked about. We've talked about making Australians proud. Great people make cricketers. We talked about our values. Not once have we talked about being the #1 team in the world. And now in Australia, we've got both. We've gone from, all the data would tell us, we're the most unlikable, most hated team in Australia when that happened. We're now the most likeable sports team in Australia. And we're also ranked #1 in Test cricket and T20 cricket. So you can have both. You can have good people and you can have excellence on the field. And that's what we've done. But it's bloody hard to guide that ship because it's so tiring. You're going to change culture. You're going to be on the behaviours every single day. And there's lots of ups and downs. You're dealing with people. As the head coach, you've got to be a dad. You've got to be a brother. You've got to be a mum. You've got to be a policeman. You've got to be a headmaster. You've got to be a psychologist. My gosh. And you've got to do it every day. You've got to get up every day. You've got to put the mask on every single day. Even when you're feeling rubbish, you've got to keep putting the mask on. You've got to stay calm. Keep putting the mask on. That's the price of being a leader.
Fabulous. There's a heck of a book when the time is right for you, I imagine. We must get on to some of the reader questions or viewer questions. And thank you to everyone who's popped them through. Actually, it segues really nicely. James Bell has asked, I just got rid of it. It was about the test, which is a fabulous watch. Have you sat down with a cold one and watched it, or are you one of those that was in it and I'll leave it where it was?
Well, I got to watch, after every episode was cut, I was able to watch it, but I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing though. There was one scene where I asked the director to take out of and it was when I kicked the bin.
And this is the question. Are you glad?
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, this is great. In retrospect, yes, I heard you ask for the scene of you kicking the bin to be deleted. In retrospect, do not look back and see that as one of the highlights of the series.
Well, it's so funny because that's exactly what happened. I said to the director, you've got to take, like, everyone will think I'm a psycho, kicking the bin. And the director goes, mate, you see what you did next? What I did next? Nathan Lyon has just missed the easiest run out in the world. What do you mean what I did next? We're going to lose the Ash, we're going to lose that game, unlosable game, Ben Stokes. He goes, you picked up all the rubbish. I said, what do you mean I picked up all the rubbish? Go and look at the scene again. And he goes, one of your guys' value is humility. You kicked over the bin, you knew you'd done the wrong thing, and you picked up the rubbish. Oh, right. And it's amazing how many people have commented on me picking up the rubbish after I'd kicked the bin over.
Tidy house, tidy mind, or whatever it is.
The other thing was my third daughter, Sophie, after watching the first few episodes, she got this funny look on her face. She's 19 now. And she said, Dad, I've just watched the test. I can't believe it. It's the first time in my life I've ever seen you angry. I went, oh, shit.
Wow.
So in one way, it's a compliment, I guess, that I get grumpy at home. But yeah, she said, I've never seen you angry like that, Dad. And I said, oh, well, that's what happens when you've got a camera literally videoing every waking hour of your day at work. That's what happens.
God. Oh, to have your temperament. The other question from James, and it's really interesting because we haven't spoken too much about this, but who did you fear the most standing at the crease, and who would you love to have faced from either yesteryear or the day?
Muralitharan.
Wow.
Because the point about batting, it's all about problem solving. That's why Steve Smith is so great, because he's the greatest problem solver I've ever seen in the game of cricket. He practices more than I've ever seen anyone. I had players who used to practice a lot. Steve Smith practices twice as much as the player I ever saw practice the most. He's a phenomenal like that. But he does that. And I could not work out Muralitharan, because he'd come in and he'd get these like big eyes pop up and it was like he was throwing out magic dust, and it looked like he was bowling a leg spinner because he used this funny thing with his wrist. So my brain's telling it to spin back towards me. Well, so my eyes were telling it to spin back to me like a leg spinner, but I knew he was going to bowl off spin. I knew he was going to spin that way. My brain said it was going to move that way, and I just could not work it out. The closest I've ever been to depression was trying to work out Muralitharan. One thing, if I ever played cricket again, I would pray, I'd ask, I don't want to face Murali. I'd rather face Shoaib Akhtar or Curtly Ambrose than Muralitharan, because Muralitharan was too hard to work out. He was brilliant.
And was it all done with quite a big smile as well? Was that quite sort of discombobulating?
Well, someone like me, when I was playing, I get the fighter instincts. I want to get in the fight, get grumpy, I want to fight. And there was three that were really hard like that. Murali, Freddie Flintoff, and Curtly Ambrose. Freddie Flintoff was easily in the best three fast bowlers I ever faced in my life.
Really?
No question. And Ambrose was easily one of those other three as well. But the problem with those is they always smiled at you. I'm saying to Freddie, come on, get it. And he'd just go, and he'd sort of just smile and laugh, and like he's like at the pub playing backyard cricket together. And I hated that. I wanted to have a fight with him, but he just kept smiling. And Ambrose was the same. Ambrose, play a miss, he'd smile. Hit you on the body, he'd smile. You hit him for four, which never happened very often, he'd smile. Get you out, he'd go, and he's still smiling. So the ones the smiling assassins, they're the ones I least like to play against.
Who did you most like playing against in terms of that, the fighter against the fighter?
Shoaib Akhtar.
Really?
Easily the fastest bowler I ever faced. Easily. No one even came close. But Matty Hayden, seriously, like he thought he was Russell Crowe from The Gladiator, right? So he's a big bloke. I don't know if you've ever seen Matty Hayden. Yeah. He's a massive, in The Gladiator, before he has the fight, he bends down, gets the dirt on his hand, and that's his sort of cue. So when Matty Hayden walked out, rub his hands on the grass, he thought he was Russell Crowe, the big clown. But anyway, we're playing Pakistan. We'd walk onto the ground, and I knew I was taking the first. He'd walk beeline straight to Shoaib Akhtar and start sledging him, because we knew. And I'd go, hey, Dos, relax, man. I'm going to face the first ball. He's going, no. It's like get him angry or bowl rubbish. The angrier he gets, the faster he tries to bowl. The faster he tries to bowl, the more he gives you to hit for four. So we used to have great battles, and he was fast. So your heart's, but you knew you're alive. If you're facing him, Shoaib Akhtar, you know you're alive, right? No question. But I also loved that fight with him, and I knew the angrier he got, the better it was for us.
Rather you than me. Really nice. Hey, JL, your biggest fan from Nepal, country of the Himalayas. In your point of view, what means most actually work?
No question.
Right now, then.
Well, we have retained it, but the World Cup, we've had great success in the World Cup. It was disappointing we got beat in the semi-final this year. From where we'd come from, I thought it was a great achievement, actually. And we lost Sean Marsh and Usman Khawaja the game before the semi-final, which blew up our game plan. But Australia had great. I think we've won 3 of the last 5 World Cups, or 4 of the last 5 World Cups, or something ridiculous. And World Cups are really important. But the Ashes, I mean, in Australia, the Australian public, it's all about the Ashes. Australia versus England, it is all about the Ashes. My gosh, it's bloody brilliant.
Talking of the World Cup and talking of the Ashes, Ben Stokes, discuss.
If I could have one player in the world in my team, I'd have Ben Stokes. I can't give him a greater compliment than that. Everyone remembers his 100 at Leeds, right? Unbelievable. I mean, that was one of the greatest innings. It's almost, you look back on it, I still can't believe it happened like it did. Everyone remembers that, so that's great. No one remembers what he did the day before. The day before, he bowled, I think it was like a 14 over spell. Or 14 over straight. And it changed the game again, because I think Jofra Archer had gone off with something and he just kept running in and bowling and bowling. And in modern sport or modern cricket, that does not happen. What he did, to me, was more freaky than his innings. I just think and it's so funny because it's like Andy Caddick, right? Andy Caddick was the biggest knob I ever played in World Australia versus England. Absolute clown. He talked so much. He was the worst sledger I've ever seen in my life. Somerset versus Middlesex. He is the worst bloke I ever played against, right? I've never heard anyone talk so much rubbish, right? I played with him at Somerset. He's one of the best people I ever played with in my life. So Ben Stokes, I'll never forget this. We have a perception of Ben Stokes because of what happened, off the field a few years ago, and he didn't come out for the Ashes. And we think about Ben Stokes, and we're not sure. And then we see him play cricket. We admire his cricket. After the Test series, we were in the at the Oval, and Joss Butler and Bairstow, and I was with Trevor Bayliss. He was over there, and I said to Joss Butler, mate, Ben Stokes is a good bloke. And Joss Butler got this look on his face. He goes, good bloke. He goes, JL, if you coached him, he would be your favourite player you've ever coached in your life. Because I played with Joss earlier. So he goes, you would absolutely love him, right? I went, really? He goes, mate, he is a great bloke. I went, okay. Then I spoke to Trevor Bayliss that night. We had a few beers. I said, Bayliss, Ben Stokes a good bloke? He goes, oh, good bloke. Mate, he's my favourite. I said, really? He goes, he's a great bloke. So by the end of the night, we'd all had a few beers. I went and stole a baggy green cap, put it on Ben Stokes' head and put him over my shoulder and told him, you're coming with me, mate. I'll do any day of the week. I'd have him or Virat Kohli, but he's a great competitor. He obviously had a golden summer last summer. He's done it again this year. You know what else I love about Ben Stokes? I watch what he does off the field, as in when he's at the end of a day's play, he'll go and run 400s. He'll go and run 200s. He's so flippin' fit. The guys who have played with him at Rajasthan Royals say his work ethic, you've almost got to stop him from training so hard. Mate, that's massive respect. Anyone who knows me, that would get plenty of brownie points from my point of view.
Good. I like to hear that from the other side of the fence. Let's do some quick fires. Actually, I'll tell you what, on that, and you mentioned you played against Flintoff and you've coached against Stokes. In their prime, who would win at the top trumps?
Well, Flintoff's bowling. Ben Stokes, his heart and his spirit with the ball is awesome. He can swing it. But as I said, Andrew Flintoff was in the top 3 fast bowlers I ever faced in my life. He was a serious bowler. But Ben Stokes' batting, I would say, is better than Andrew Flintoff. So both great competitors, both, I believe, I know Andrew Flint's a great bloke. I love him, but I don't know Ben Stokes very well at all, really. But both great players, great competitors, very proud Englishmen. I'd have both of them on my team if I could.
Splinters on the fence. Best overall cricketer you ever played with or against, apart from Joe Ray. So I can't tell you who asked the question.
If I'm Splinters, who would you go for, Stokes or Flintoff?
I think Stokes is 1% in front at the moment. I think Stokes is doing things. Yeah, I think Stokes is doing things single-handedly, and I think. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. It's the pub question. But I think Stokes' summer last year was extraordinary.
No
A
doubt.
sustained period. I don't know.
As Flintoff was against us in 2005.
Stokes has done it in all formats.
Yeah.
I don't know. I ask the questions here. I certainly don't offer the answers. Best overall cricketer, played with or against? Played with. Of that great team.
Shane Warne.
Interesting.
The hardest thing in the world is to bowl leg spin, and he was a genius.
Yeah, he was indeed. In the old days, says Howard, the Ashes tour started in March and ended in September, playing virtually all the counties on the way. If the ICC allowed it, would you like to give back to that format, having spent 300 days away from home last year?
Yeah, well, the problem is that now with the schedule that is in 3 forms of the game, they literally can't do it, because last year with 300 days away, the guys have got a lot of these days, I guess. I mean, in 1993, the tour I got dropped for, Damien Martin and Matthew Hayden scored 1,000 first-class runs on the tour and didn't play a test match.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. So I just think the biggest issue in world cricket at the moment is the schedule. There's just too much cricket.
All right. John Altman, hi old pal. I was at that Antigua test you mentioned. Do you remember when we put on the Malcolm Marshall Memorial match at the HAC ground in Moorgate, and you insisted on watching Greenidge and Haynes open the batting? The only player who came out to watch the greats. It says a lot about your love of the game. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, Greenidge and Haynes. I mean, I think, and again, I don't want to sound like a knob, but Haydos and I came second to Greenidge and Haynes, and even the very thought of being close to those 2 legends that I was growing up watching, with Viv Richards at number 3. Oh my God. Oh, and Desmond Haynes played at Middlesex just before me, and what a character. And John, it's great to hear from you, old mate.
Good. Ali from Bangladesh, why didn't you seriously consider a career in ODIs despite your legendary test career?
Well, it's not that I didn't consider it, it's that it was too hard to get into the team. That's the truth. I mean, when I started, Adam Gilchrist and Mark Moore opened the batting. We had Ricky Ponding at 3. We had Damien Martin and Michael Bevan. We had Matthew Hayden. It's not that I didn't consider it. I just wasn't able to break into that great cricket team that won a couple of World Cups.
Is that a regret, or it is what it is?
I always felt whenever the team was read out, and to the very last, when I was 35 or 36 when I retired from international cricket, I still wish I'd have been selected in the team right to the very end.
Really? That is interesting, honest. Peter Wakeman, what advice would you have given to the Windies on the final day of the 3rd test, and do you think they were given the same advice by their coach? What went wrong? ?
Well, the truth is, I think the West Indies, whilst there's improvement, if you haven't got a really, really, really sound batting technique against James Anderson and Stuart Broad, Jofra Archer and Chris Wokes, I think any team's going to struggle. And they've got to have, I don't think it was their attitude. I think they're working hard towards become more technically sound. And when you're playing against great bowlers like England had in that last test series, that last test match, I don't think it was an attitude thing personally.
Interesting. Is there any test match you thought you would lose for sure, but ended up winning?
Yeah, the second test in 2006-7 in Adelaide. Collingwood got 200. I think Kevin Pease got 170 in the first innings, or a lot. And we got to the last day. It was definitely going to be a draw. And Shane Warne bowled the most extraordinary 3 hours of bowling or whatever you've ever seen. I think he bowled 30 odd overs. I only got 4 or 5 but went for about 34 runs or 35, something ridiculous. I'm not great with numbers, and we ended up beating. And I think that was the moment where England thought, if we're going to lose from here, we're not going to beat these guys. We ended up winning that series 5-0, and that was the last test match that I retired from playing. So Yeah, that was an amazing test match. But you can't do that without Shane Warne. That's why I would say he was the best player I ever played with.
And the reverse question, which is, have you been involved in a test match where you were sure you were going to win and then ended up losing?
Yeah, the third test last year in the Ashes.
Sorry, it was a dolly, but it had to be asked. At what point did it swing? Did you go from thinking we're where we need to be to hold on?
No, we were. England got. I think I can't remember who was not eighth down, but with 75 runs to get, Nathan Lyon bowled the sixth ball of the over to Ben Stokes, and he just whipped one out to deep backward square leg for a single. And I said, that's the dumbest cricket, because we left him on strike, right? Instead of risking him hitting a boundary. So he got a single off, and it was just the first little mistake we made. Keep him on strike. And then one of our coaches said, "Oh, relax, mate. They need 74 to go." I said, "Ben Stokes, have you seen how his summer's gone? This game is not over until Ben Stokes." I said that was 74 runs to go. Yeah. Unbelievable. So that was incredible innings.
Yeah. How do you reflect on that now? Genuinely, do you ever wake up I mean, obviously you ended up where you wanted to end up, but I just wonder whether you ever sort of think, does it flash back or is it gone?
Yeah, this is a true story. I swear to God. When I got home from the Ashes,
yeah,
and you get home to Perth and you got terrible jet lag, right? 3 nights in a row, I woke up at 1 o'clock at the same time to the same dream. Nathan Lyon bowling to Ben Stokes, plays the sweep shot. Umpire gives it not out when we didn't have any referrals left. And I'm going, oh! And I woke up. I woke 3 nights in a row. It was a recurring nightmare. So,
yeah.
I mean, game.
You can leave these things at work. Krishna, best team ever, Aussies under Ricky or Windies under Clive Lloyd? That would have been a hell of a series.
The only difference I would say is that we had Shane Warne.
Yeah.
And we had something that the West Indies had a great fast bowling attack. We had a great fast bowling attack with Shane Warne. So therefore, and I'm sure the West Indies, their great team would have adapted to that. But traditionally, the West Indies didn't play leg spin particularly well. But it'd be hard for me to say that, one, because I'd never say we're better than that team, because they were literally my heroes when I grew up.
Somebody somewhere will build an AI algorithm, and we'll be able to watch that one day. A couple more just to finish. Interesting. What was your feeling watching the 2019 World Cup final? Who did you want to win?
Oh, I can't say that on here to a predominantly English audience with Joe in the background. I'll tell you what I remember about it. I was at Lisa Tufnell, Phil Tufnell's ex-wife's house in Guildford, and the Wimbledon final was on. I think
yes.
On, and so we were running from room to room, and then I was certain that at one point England had lost it. And then there was that 5 runs, that overthrow that went for 4. And then there was the catch. Like, the catch on the boundary.
Oh, you stepped on the rope. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the game or so before, Trent Boult took the best catch of all time in a tense game against the West Indies, where he took it cool as a cucumber to win. Carlos Braithwaite had been going mad, and he took this beautiful catch, game over. How he stepped back onto the rope is still beyond me. I still can't. But you know what? I honestly believe this. I believe it was destiny. England had been so good for the years leading up to it, playing in England, playing at Lord's, and I believe that there was something of destiny. Alvin Morgan, I've got great respect and admiration for him. Fantastic captain, ripping bloke. And yeah, I mean, there was certainly a touch of destiny in that, if you believe in that.
Amazing. We had a chat very similar to this with Owen on NBN Digital a few weeks ago. Great guy, and wonderful to relive that with him. Final question: what's on the to-do list for the next week or so? Getting yourself ready. You know, what are the priorities now?
Well, it's so complicated. The complexities in the world we live in of one getting from Australia, which is until the last 10 days is relatively COVID free. In Perth, where I live, I think we've got 2 live cases of COVID in all of Western Australia.
Wow.
And they were 2 people that came from overseas and are quarantining for 2 weeks in a hotel room. So we've got 2 cases in all of Western Australia. So, but our government is so strict of us leaving the country now for obvious reasons. But then it's when we come back from England, obviously we're getting a dress rehearsal from the West Indies and Pakistan. We go straight to, we play 3 T20s at the Ageas Bowl in Hampshire, then we play 3 one-days at Old Trafford, then we get on a plane and come home. But the capacity is when we go home. Our federal government, state governments, they're not just going to allow us to come back in that easily. And when we do, we go into quarantine, and that's the start of our summer. And it's going to be really problematic. So it's really, and in our business, there's so many stakeholders. There's the federal government, there's the state government, there's the British government. Moving forward, there's the Indian government. There's the broadcasters, which have a massive role to play in our sport today. There's the ICC, there's the BCCI, there's the Players Association, there's all the biosecurity stuff. And all these stakeholders have to have a say in how this is all going to work. It is so flippin' complex. My brain, I've hardly left this office for the last 3 weeks. So, and my brain is spinning, but we know it's important to come over there, and we're looking forward to it when we do.
To just be padding up against play for Old Mill Hill again, hey? Just the simplicity of it all.
They were the days I loved. Oh, what a time in my life. What a time in my life. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky to have lived a life in cricket, lived a life in sport. You know, when I was 18 years old, this is a true story. It's in my desk here where I'm sitting. I wrote, in 1990, I was 18, and the family did this time capsule where we had to write a letter to ourselves, an 18-year-old, which we're all going to read in the year 2000, 12 years later, right? When my mum passed away a few years ago, she left this letter for me. And it was the first time I'd ever read it. This is like 30 years later or whatever. Or 25, whatever it was, 25 years later. Anyway, in this letter, the 3rd paragraph, I wrote as an 18-year-old, imagine if someone would write me a contract today and tell me I'd play cricket for Australia and be involved in Australian cricket the rest of my life. I'm the happiest person in my life. I'm sitting now as a 50-year-old. I wrote that when I was 18 years old. I mean, honestly, the people I met, the memories, I've been so lucky. I'm so blessed, and I never, ever, ever take that for granted.
It's been a wonderful life in cricket. Some very exciting chapters to come for you, starting in a few weeks' time. Justin, we are hugely, hugely grateful to you and privileged to have shared an hour with you. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck. Keep that lawn looking military in the meantime, and we'll look forward to tuning in a few weeks' time when you're over here.
Great, Alex, thanks.
Everyone, we're hugely grateful. So we'll wrap things up just by saying thank you to everyone for joining NBN Digital this afternoon. Lots more exciting events on the way. If you joined our first and our second, great to have you back, but hopefully greater plans and greater and extra sort of webinars to come in the not too distant future over the next few weeks or so. Do also look out for the NBN events emails. They'll be keeping you updated. Obviously, things are fairly fluid at the moment, but hopefully NBN events will be back doing what they do best before too long. Thank you once again to Justin. It's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure. Thank you very much. You look after your family and yourself. See you over here very soon. And to everyone else, enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you for dialing in, tuning in. And we'll hopefully be seeing you again soon from both of us. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.
See you guys. Thanks a lot.